Hello everybody. I want to introduce my really beloved colleague, Rui Cang from LA, who I have known now for many years and really relied on her expertise as a sensory motor psychotherapist and as a TIST therapist and facilitator, meaning that she certifies therapists who've trained in TIST. And it's wonderful. It's like we have this little fellowship. And and I wanted particularly at this particular moment, I particularly wanted to ask Ray to give us some some insights, some thoughts about working with the challenges faced by Asian clients, because the world is not getting safer, unfortunately.
Yeah. Hi, Janina. Hi, everybody. It's such a honor, and I'm so happy to be here and talking about a very important and, of course, one of my most passionate topics, which is to help the Asian community. So thank you so much for having me here. Yeah. Oh my goodness, where do I even start?
I think there's sort of two issues, like what are the biggest challenges and sort of sources of distress for the Asian community, but also how can therapists of every ethnicity appreciate the Asian culture that our
Yeah,
clients bring? Because
yeah,
I think if you don't understand the culture, you're not going to get the person.
exactly. So that's why, I'll say I was just accounting it yesterday that I have like probably 40-50% of my clientele are Asian. They either Asian American or Asian immigrants. I actually still have a few clients directly calling me from China. But yes, so with it, so I am almost kind of thinking this almost bigger global um, effects of the politics right now, not only here in the United States. I'm keeping all the folks in China as well. I know, of course, because the connection and the folks here have their connections and roots from China, and then with, of course, the relationship right now between China and United States. And
Right.
since COVID, with all Asian hate kind of crimes and the nervous system being pretty stirred up. So you're absolutely seeing that in the day-to-day kind of conversations, sessions, struggles. You can feel everyone. I mean, this I feel like can normalize not just the Asian population to like all of us right here, right now.
Right.
At this moment of time, I think even right now, like today, I feel my nervous system responding to the horrible news every day. We're really feeling it. But I have to say thanks, to almost like first of all, I am Chinese. I was born and raised in Beijing. I'm happy to share a little bit of a story, maybe later on, how I become a therapist, how I influence, why. But right now, as a Chinese um, person, kind of, with all my clients, and we have this yin and yang kind of idea in the Chinese philosophies. So it's almost like there's the good things that are coming out from the Asian hate kind of that events were, I definitely seen a lot more mental health kind of awareness in the
Right.
Asian community, kind of that give people more permission to reach out and to really break through some taboos and stigmas. So I really that's really the positive side of it. I really start to see a lot of Asian populations finally start able to reach out. And that's when I start really getting a lot of calls when that started happening. So that's really the positive side of it. But yes, and yeah.
I bet you were getting a lot of calls.
Yes, currently I am that it's always, my passion. becoming a therapist, I was born and raised in China, and my journey was a little bit like it was nothing. There was no psychology whatsoever in China. And I was actually, because my kind of rebellious part, I wasn't the perfect student in high school, kind of really branch out, wanted to do non-traditional studies and objects. And so my score actually wasn't high enough to get into those preferred majors, which are, engineers or math or, very very encouraged to be for in the Asian community. But I was so lucky that my score was able to get me to a psychology major in college in Zhejiang University in China, and was extremely appreciative and lucky that my mom was able to get me internship in one of the hospital
Oh,
in China called Tongren Hospital. And I started an internship there every summer, when I have a break
oh, wow.
school, and start to really see. I mean, back then, this is what I'm talking about, early 2000, there was just no therapy, really. People don't understand what therapy is. There's no, just no such thing. There's no resource. And so I interned at the psychiatric department, of course, and they're doing medication treatment and some like cognitive behavioral therapy, like therapy,
Yeah.
and some sort of emotional support. So this is kind of really like when you're talking about the obstacles or challenges, I started to really realize, oh my goodness, there's really no other place in this culture to talk about emotions. It just, this culture is so, I know, I mean, I wanted to talk to a historian to really understand how they become this way, but there's no room, there's no space to talk about your emotions, process emotions, to understand emotions.
Right.
And
And
so that,
my first Chinese client said to me, and I remember because it stayed with me it's been decades. Um, she said, "You have to understand, I'm Chinese. And, and in my culture, we're, we don't think of ourselves as individuals. We're thinking about the whole family. We are thinking about our elders, but we're not focusing, because of course therapy was all about focusing on her." And and she said, it's very uncomfortable.
that is such an important, like you're saying, what, as a practitioner with clinicians, what we wanted to keep in mind. I mean, that's like the top pointer, right? For us to really keep in mind is like the individualism, versus the collectivism. Like we're here in the United States, is more of individualism kind of culture. But in Asian countries, most of Asian countries are very collectivism.
Right.
And for people who grew up here in Asian American here or the immigrant here, then you're bicultural. Then how do we merge the two culture and constantly feeling the conflicts between the different values in different cultures, and how do you navigate that um, in this specific society? Those are all the, like you're saying, the challenges and issues that we're working through in therapy. Absolutely.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's so complicated. I can see.
It is so complicated. That's why I'm like, where do we even start? That's, yes. So that's the, it's all kind of intertwined, because in order for this collectivism to happen, and we can see, like I remember you, Janina, talking about that in your shame training. It's like, in order, the function of shame, this emotion, is to keep people together. So it makes sense for collectivism cultures.
And to promote compliance, which
100%.
and yeah, you have to have a lot of compliance to be in a I in a sort of collective culture.
Exactly. In order, in your, words, again, in order to, you have to submit in order to keep this structure together. We had to give up our own needs and wants. We had to sacrifice. We had
Right.
to caretake. We had to keep people pleased. We had to give up a boundary, and we cannot say no. And these are all the submit strategies in order to keep this structure together, to keep this collectivism. So, and the shame that's just it's very effective emotion to to make that happen.
Right. Yeah, I
Yes,
would say if you want children to be compliant, fear and shame are the most effective strategies.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, so yeah, so I'll say that's the biggest part you see, when I do work with clients, and it's such a submit strategy dominated culture and is so shame dominated. I just remember before I came to United States, I didn't even understand the word boundary. Like I understand I don't even know, first of all, how to translate that into Chinese. There's still many words that I use. That's why it's quite challenging for me to actually. I also speak Mandarin, so do Mandarin sessions with Mandarin speaking clients because there's so many words, emotional words, like words like boundaries or empathy. Sometimes it's just so not frequently used in the culture. I had zero understanding. What do you mean by boundary? Like, what is the sense of boundary? Because we had to really give that up growing up in order to, like you're saying, to form this unity as a family. Like, it's nothing. It's about the individual self. Everything is about the family. Then, above that is about the community. Then above that is about the country. So there's nothing you do is about your individual needs. So then the challenge is to, like, when you do this kind of work and you do self, you help client to find the sense of self, help the client to find that self empowerment, you help the client to find self resilience when there's no sense of self, when they don't understand the concept of the self, and you wanted to help them to advocate for their needs because they're just such a conditioning to not verbalize your needs, and they don't understand. They know they need something, but there's no words or vocabulary, or they cannot articulate, they cannot comprehend
Right.
what their needs are. There's no modeling, and in so that's something we're really really kind of holding space for, really kind of exploring with them in sessions. Yeah.
Yeah. But with with my Chinese patient of so many years ago, she I said to her, I said to her, I guess after our conversation about, you know, the individualistic versus collective culture, I said to her, would you prefer to see a Chinese therapist or an Asian therapist? And she said, no, because the Chinese language has no words for emotion. She said, I want an English speaking therapist.
Yes. Even to this day, I mean, I just had a Chinese client this morning because time difference. I see her. Their time is night and my time is morning. I still struggle when I want to use those very tender, compassionate voice. I really want to model that because I know that's the core missing experience end of the day for them, for those young parts, especially for those very vulnerable, attached parts. I just couldn't find the Chinese way of saying it. I'm
Yeah.
like, I need to watch some maybe a model center modeling to really channel that energy in a Chinese way. And I don't know, speaking of one of the challenges for Asian clients, because I don't know starting when our culture is such a gentle culture. It is very overall. I mean, there's so many. I really don't want to just demonize this culture. Like, I'm very proud of being Chinese. I'm very proud of being Asian. I'm really proud of my culture. I do want to say that there's so many beautiful things. about
Mm.
the culture, and it's so healing. And I find, Buddhism philosophy also is a huge influence on my practice. And it's just so many beautiful things about the culture. And at the same time, I don't know at what point of the history and the culture there is this belief of you don't want to cuddle your child, you don't want to spoil your child. Um, there is, it seems a little, there's always a saying in Chinese called 打是亲, 骂是爱. The literally translation is physical punishment or hitting is love and scolding is care. And
Oh,
it just so
interesting.
rooted, so rooted. And I used to work with parents and who get court ordered to take parenting classes
Oh, no.
because they're, because their method, but they are truly believing that they're saying, but I don't, it's really coming, like you're saying, coming from this fear. But the fear is so rooted in their belief system. They really believe that if I cuddle my child, if I show too much affection and I'm going to spoil the child. If I spoil the child, and they're not going to be able to have skills and independence, and then,
Right.
then and then the other hand, then they feel the need to helicopter their children. Then
Mm.
there's another messaging you're giving the children that you're not capable. Like I need to monitor you. I need to over control you. I need to you can make your own decisions. That's another thing when we're seeing Asian clients. There's a lot of indecisiveness coming up. I mean, there's many layers in this indecisiveness. I feel like there's many cultural uh, aspects that contribute into this indecisiveness. But one of the, I feel like it's this like helicopter parenting that you're not really able to give the child autonomy to make their own decision, to trust their own body and their own will to be
Right.
able. But like then circle back to the individualism. It's like, well, because we don't want them to be developing that kind of individuality.
Yeah.
Um,
We want them to be compliant, but not soft.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
then it's confusing for the children in some ways.
Very confusing. And I
Yeah.
think that, the helicopter parenting is kind of what what you get if you're not allowed to express love to your child.
Yeah.
You get anxiety.
Oh my gosh, right? This anxiety, I have so many. I feel like probably most of my Asian clients, they have internalized anxiety part, but it's from their parents. It's not their own anxiety,
Right.
it's the projection from their anxiety because it's a kind of helicopter. I just
Right.
remember every time when I leave the house, right now I'm sending my daughter to school. I say, have fun,
Ah,
enjoy. Like, but I remember when I was little, the message always just said, be careful, um, watch out. There's always, when you send a kid out, it's always, the last word is always be careful or 小心点，注意安全, like, watch for your safety. Like it's always some sort of anxiety, fear driven. That's kind of the message we're all carrying the body kind of generationally passing down.
right.
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's another challenge. I think is also the generational trauma you're seeing in this population's bodies. There's just so much generational trauma. For Chinese, it's just speaking from myself, is my parents gone through the Cultural Revolution. That's also why I wanted to study psychology because I really see how this trauma manifests. Now I understand this trauma since, started sensory motor psychotherapy in 2014. Now I have the verbiage to describe, oh, that's just a manifestation of trauma in the
Right.
body. But back then, I just did not understand why my dad would faint all of a sudden, right? There's big emotional event. Why my mom will having these anger outbursts and just that's kind of where it really fueled my curiosity to want to study psychology and understand trauma. And now It just after sensory motor, after TIST, your training really finally have the understanding of what's going on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and I think I think we do forget the the multi-generational trauma that actually is true for all the Asian countries.
yeah,
Eh, um,
absolutely. Absolutely.
it has not
Absolutely.
been easy going.
Yeah, all the Asian countries and also the immigration history,
Right,
surviving as an immigrant, Asian American, kids oftentimes being very parentified because they have to be the translator, interpreter for their own parents and see the parents struggle and working hard. And I was just talking about it with a client before this, and to talk about like the financial trauma, um, and the money trauma pretty much.
right,
And
right,
she is really trying to make sense of her own relationship with money and finance, the fear around it, and really start acknowledging, the generational trauma around it. Yeah,
right. And we forget that racism it has socioeconomic effects. Um,
100%. Yeah,
right.
yeah, yes,
And
absolutely.
if you can't be safe on the street, if you can't provide food for your children, that
Yeah,
I mean, even not being able to provide food for your children is traumatic.
absolutely. And at the same time, trying to survive, trying to fit in. I have a lot of clients who didn't grow up in a very Asian populated community. There are a lot of Asian American clients of mine. They grew up to be the only Asian in the community, the only Asian in the at school, and try to just blend in as a survival. To
Yeah.
give up your own identity, to give up your own culture. Like their parents didn't even have this Japanese client. The parents didn't even cook Japanese food. The client, and also, oh my gosh, speaking of that trauma, the encampment of the Japanese.
Yeah.
That's also so that's her generational trauma of that. Then it's really for survival to really give up your own culture. Um, do not speak the language, do not cook the food. Really just try to blend in as a survival. And but for the
Right.
child, now my client, it is the inter struggle of identity, and uh, that's yeah,
Right. Right. Which is so sad because it's it's an identity you that one could be proud of.
exactly. That's what you know It's also interesting because you can see, at least here in Los Angeles, where you're really influenced by, Hollywood culture, entertainment, and you can see it's so wonderful, to see so many Asian media, movies, TV shows, food, actors, actresses, they're really able to blossom recent years, and our culture really being recognized and people are interested in it. And it's interesting in the same time, also holding space that is actually triggering for some of my clients. Like, so for this clients could be very triggering because now they're coming to her saying, oh, that's your culture. And for her to say, no, that's not my culture. And my culture is different than this what this TV show is showing. So now you guys just thinking you know our culture. But for her to even try to re-embody her own culture because that was such a trauma associated with her culture, and then to see people kind of fantasize that culture or popularize that culture for her, it's a struggle.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. Right. Because if your culture means you're going to be sent uh to an internship camp, you know, you, you don't want to be that culture.
exactly. for survival, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes. So so one of the challenges is for sure this intergenerational trauma. So the trauma work, from sensory motor psychotherapy, especially from TIST, has been really significant and being really helpful for the client to really try to even understand these trauma parts and to really reclaim, who they are as a person.
Mm.
And it's just being really, helpful in the sessions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it must be so wonderful to have people reconnect to themselves in these more empathic ways.
exactly. And to write, like you're saying, to hold the space, understand the self that they're exploring might sounds different than the Western culture of self.
Mhm.
Then helping them to find their own version of self and to find that balance of like, yes, we can still be in collectivism culture, we can still be in community, we can still have close relationship with our parents. And at the same time, we don't have to give up this sense of self and to find that balance and the naming. I love how remember one of the trainings how you really named for this, I think, Korean American client of their loyal part. And
Yeah.
that really, really stuck with me and really helped me with a lot of my clients to really see I don't have to give up, my own culture. I don't have to give up this loyal part. I can work with it. I can have my own wants and needs in myself, and I can work with this culture part. This part that holds all the obligations, and I don't think any Asian client don't have a very high loyal, obligation to the family part.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I think of it as part of the culture.
Yeah.
It's such a high value.
Yeah. Again, there's many beauty in it, right? Like I'm speaking as my parents are actually in my house, kind they're living with me. Right. You see the multi-generational structure. I love to see how they're keeping, they're busy with caring for my daughter and how my daughter is so nourished by the grandparents. It's like these very multi-generational family structure is absolutely beautiful and it just feeds the human soul of being, we are always in a village, we're always in community. It just is such a beautiful. And at the same time, right, I do have to say it's a triggering, of course, because
And challenging.
it's very challenging, it's very triggering to be able to still find myself and set the boundaries and but set the boundary in a way that's acceptable in the culture. Because if you just purely talking about Chinese culture, there's zero boundary.
Right.
Then how do I set a boundary that's flexible, that's fluid, is not rigid, and it can fit into the culture? It's more of like a psychological boundary. I just kind of imagine like a bubble kind of around myself, and that helps because the actually, the you remember sensory motor kind of this using the body to push kind of the hard no kind of boundary is not going to work in this
No,
culture. That's
no.
that's not going to be accepted. But for myself to have a psychological boundary of having this bubble, and that's the boundary that worked for this side. Yeah,
Right. And that our loyal parts need us to have those boundaries.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
In order for that part to feel seen, acknowledged, but not overwhelmed and not stressed out. That part need to see that we're able to do this boundary so they are not overworking themselves. Yes.
Right. Right.
So they're not burned, they don't get burned out. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's there's so many challenges that we can, if we have the time, we can talk about challenges forever. Like, but I do want to mention there's one thing I'm really noticing in a lot of my Asian clients is this attachment trauma piece
Hmm.
is being quite interesting because it's almost conflicting because it's, we're so close to our family. It is a village, like I just said, it's a village and we're cared for so many, I was cared by my own grandmother, my great grandmother, but somehow there is a very common wounded attached part in my clients. That's a very frequent theme of attachment trauma, which is quite interesting. Recently, I'm still hearing stories about, how babies were, once the baby was born, they're taken away from the mother. That's a very traditional practice because there's something we call 坐月子, meaning like the mother is very emphasizing on the health and the recovery of the mother's body. And they're very emphasizing on the mother need to recover by removing the child, meaning the child will be taken care of by
the other
yeah,
grandmothers and great grandmothers.
against the mother's will. Again, it's not about the individual support.
Right. Right.
It's the collectivism making the choice for the individual, for the individuals. So I mean, there's also traditional practice sometimes too. There are cultures that if you have the first son, will be given away to the grandparents for the grandparents to raise, and there are also cultures. So there is almost some sort of traditional practice of not really emphasizing on that primal attachment bonding,
Right.
and so I'm really seeing a lot of very young, wounded, attached part just really longing for emotional support, like longing for being seen, being heard, being cuddled, being comforted,
Right.
and it just being, that kind of feeling is really missing. And as you're saying, also in the language, it's just not very emphasized and provided later on in life either. And
Right. I mean, I'm sure it's not emphasized in psychology programs in China.
no, I don't even know other I guess there are psychology programs in China
There
now, but
must
it's definitely not emphasized on that. I feel there's a lot of solution focused and cognitive behavioral therapy, which is very fit to the current culture. Um, but again, the positive side, I'm always seeing the hopeful side of everything. The positive side is, your book is translated into Chinese
I know.
language. I'm so thrilled to find out because one of my clients in China was able to gain a version of it. And, the understanding of complex PTSD had been really widely spread in China for people to really have an understanding of their really own symptoms, because again, there's no room to really express feelings. So then it's very held in. And I know the research have been very consistent of like, Asian mental health, and there's a lot of psychosomatic symptoms as expression of, emotions, because there's no words, then the body really keeps it
Right.
all in and really express it in this very somatic, symptomatic way. And
Mhm.
people really start to have understanding of that, understanding attachment trauma. I won't it's a very, like you're saying that right now, politically also it's a very tough environment. I cannot imagine everybody's nervous system is not traumatized. People's really feeling is to really have the verbiage and the understanding of a complex PTSD really helped a lot of people to even just have the name of it
Yeah.
and to have your book to know, oh, there's something we can do about it. It's so essential and hopeful for them. Yeah.
I know it's very exciting. I was asked to do a workshop for Chinese therapists um, by an American organizer of workshops for Chinese therapists. So that's very exciting.
That's super exciting. Let me know. I'm happy to be your assistant on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be great. That would be great.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Another thing, I guess the last point I'm gonna mention is this idea about kind of endure, um, which is another challenge in therapy because it's very praised to
Right.
endure. And so the possibility for change sometimes is very challenging for client to
Right.
understand because again there is a huge emphasis, and encourage and praise the quality of to endure.
Mhm.
And in our word is called ren, and actually, there's renja, meaning like the ninja, which is, that's such is also also a form of martial art. In martial art, there's also the bit of that kind of philosophy, as if you're able to not keep your composure, not to feel any feelings, if you can, the environment is not going to change, but if you, somehow you're able to adjust yourself and to not let the environment to affect you in any ways, and that's like the ultimate,
Right.
the master level. But then it really reinforces, the internal struggles and it's we really
Well,
can
then
see
they have to be internal struggles because on the outside you're enduring.
exactly. So then the internal struggles of, then you can see a lot of internal fire response. You see a lot of, self-criticism, harming, self-harm. You can see a lot of very mean voices into yourself because again, the anger couldn't go outwards, so it turned inwards to become this internal fight. Then you see a lot of internal, uh, like the submit part, the shame part, to
Right.
keep the nervous system low, and you see a lot of self-loathing that comes with it. And yeah, it's a whole system within that is like a pressure cooker that sometimes people really is not the humanly is right just for the biological it's not the healthy thing to do. But when people are not able to kind of put the pressure lid on, it's like a volcano, you eventually will explode. You see that pattern law is people will run, people will endure, then eventually it will explode. Then it triggers the shame because you were told that you were supposed to endure. You're told that you're supposed to, you did not reach that level of, mastering your, keeping your emotions in control. Then there's just so much shame for expressing your emotion that way. So you just become as such like a cycle internally.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yes. And I think it's so important for therapists to understand that because otherwise, um, I think a lot of therapists would think that their clients were being resistant
exactly.
rather
Exactly.
than, right, this is a centuries old internal conflict.
Yeah, exactly. I just had a client yesterday was saying that, she's like, you do not understand how hard it is to change these beliefs. You feel like these are like centuries of those thick roots that really rooted it into your body.
Yeah.
And these beliefs, these conditions, and to even fathom the possibility that you can do something about these thousands of, you know, thick, strong roots, and to change that in the body, in your belief system is it's so hard. It is so hard.
It is. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Yeah. And I was telling her, and she's doing it. And that is just the beautiful thing of human that we're able to with with connection, with relationship, with your relationship with your own self, your own parts, and with others. And we are getting in touch with the true self, with the true humanity of ours. And then we start to be able to question some of these beliefs.
that's
Yeah.
so cool. I could talk to you all day.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you.
It's just been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Janina. Such an honor and just such a pleasure.